Welcome to Unit 4, which I like to think of as a tour of the produce section. The amount of research on the health and disease consequences of our food, it increases exponentially each year, and a segment of that research is revealing the health benefits of plants, proving more and more that the influence of whole foods on our physiology is more than just the sum of its nutrient parts. At the same time, there's a movement towards plant-based meals in the restaurant sector, the community of internet food bloggers, and in social circles in general. Eating clean may have originated with the health food hippies, but it became magnified and I would say improved when it became trendy to American households. And together, this increased research, increased interest and demand, and a culinary movement has already made some changes to the American food culture that you described in Quiz 1. When studying plants, it's customary to group them, and there are many different ways in which plants can be categorized. In my research for this course, I found several different approaches. We can go based on botanical classification as a botanist would, but we'll take the edible part approach. Of course, plants can be grouped based on characteristics such as annual perennial, ideal temperatures for growing, soil variables, etc. One interesting thing to note is that plants were first classified based on usefulness and harmfulness, things that we'd want to let our offspring know about, keep us away from danger. By definition, a vegetable is the edible portion of a plant, and a fruit is a mature ovary of a plant. Vegetables are grouped according to the portion consumed, and we eat all areas of the plant across many different species. We eat the leaves in the case of lettuce and spinach, the stem with celery, the roots in the case of carrots, tubers as the potato, the bulb of the plant with onions, and flowers like broccoli and cauliflower. Fruit can be split into categories of mature like peas, beans, and melons, and immature like pumpkins and tomatoes and peppers. So here's a fun video that you definitely will not be tested on. So check out the SciShow for a detailed explanation of fruit classification. So let's talk about greens. Calorie for calorie, they are among the healthiest foods on the planet, yet just 1 in 25 people reach a dozen servings a month. We should be aiming for about a dozen a week. Of all the food groups analyzed by a group of Harvard researchers in 2014, green leafies had the strongest inverse association with major chronic disease and cardiovascular disease. But this isn't new information. George Washington himself knew all about it. He would send his troops to forage for wild greens, calling them very conducive to health and tend to prevent all putrid disorders. If you looked forward to fall foliage each year growing up like I did, you expected to see all of these different colors around the second week in October. But those colors were there all along. They were just masked by that green pigment chlorophyll. This means that when you're eating your greens, you're also gaining many antioxidants associated with other colorful vegetables. Here we have an optional video, but this is one showing that chlorophyll binds to carcinogens, which prevents them from damaging our DNA. In fact, when researchers dropped chlorophyll in a petri dish, DNA damage was completely abolished. Optional video number 2 on chlorophyll shows that chlorophyll might still respond to light even when it's inside you after you've consumed it. Not only that, but when it does, there's evidence that it boosts our body's CoQ10 levels. That's an important antioxidant in our mitochondria, the electron transport chain, which is responsible for helping reduce free radical production in the first place. When eating your greens, be sure to pair them with fat in order to better absorb those fat-soluble vitamins and compounds. You can do this by adding avocado, nuts, and seeds to your salad or dish. Now, younger greens have more phytonutrients than older greens. In fact, microgreens, the 1 to 2 week old seedlings, have higher levels of phytonutrients than mature plants do. And growing your own herbs always lets you have them on hand and to add a flavor boost to a meal. So things like mint leaves, basil, cilantro, always good to have in your own garden when you have the space for it. And if you aren't a fan of the taste of greens, you can always put them in a blender and make a smoothie. The sweeter flavors of some of the fruit that you'd combine it with, they tend to overpower the more mild greens like spinach. One more tip is blanching, which you'll see in the first video, and that's briefly placing the greens in boiling water to reduce their bitterness. Cruciferous vegetables include broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and Brussels sprouts, among others, and these contain high amounts of fiber, folate, and carotenoids, but also have the powerful sulfur-containing chemicals called glucosinolates. And the most prominent of these is called sulforaphane, which gives these cruciferous vegetables their anti-cancer properties, protection against nerve damage in the brain and the eyes, and adds a boost to liver enzymes and activates defense mechanisms against pathogens and pollutants that would otherwise make us sick. The interesting thing about sulforaphane is that it's actually not in the cells of the plant, but the precursor compound called glucoraphanin and the enzyme myrosinase are. And when we cut or chew these vegetables, the two are introduced and sulforaphane is produced. One problem arises with this system, and that's cooking. Cooking destroys the myrosinase enzyme. In fact, broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts didn't suppress cancer cell growth when they were boiled and steamed, since sulforaphane wasn't created. Health benefits are maximized if you eat raw cruciferous vegetables, or if you use the hack and hold technique, where you chop up the vegetables ahead of time, allowing the enzyme and the substrate to merge, and then wait 40 minutes before cooking. And that allows that sulforaphane to be created. And sulforaphane can take the heat. It's only the myrosinase that can't. I'm not sure how this was discovered, but apparently if you add powdered mustard seeds to cooked broccoli, you can maximize the production of sulforaphane, almost to the point of eating it raw. Phytonutrients are what give plants their colors and protect them from germs and fungi and pests. Plants that are sprayed with lots of pesticides, they tend to produce less phytonutrients because they don't need as much as a defense mechanism. While phytonutrients are not considered essential to survive, they are an essential nutrient to thrive, and since they're not evenly distributed throughout the plant kingdom, having variety is key to expose yourself to the more than 25,000 phytonutrients in plant foods. Carotenoids give foods the yellow, orange, and red colors. They are potent antioxidants, and a few can be converted in the body to vitamin A. Lycopene gives the red color in a tomato, and it's been shown to lower the risk of prostate cancer. And diets rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, they may help hold off age-related eye diseases. For example, one study found that people who ate foods rich in zeaxanthin, think the green veggies like spinach, kale, and broccoli, they may be half as likely to get cataracts. Another showed that if you have macular degeneration, which causes damage to the middle of your retina and can take away your central vision, supplements with lutein and zeaxanthin can slow its progress. And eye doctors have a test that they use to measure the level of these nutrients inside of your eye. Ellagic acid is found in nuts and berries, and it's thought to play defense against cancer, preventing carcinogens from binding to your DNA. And phytoestrogens can exert weak estrogen-like effects on the body, and their body often recognizes these as our own estrogens and causes us to downregulate our own production. Longer lifetime estrogen exposure increases risk of reproductive cancers like breast and endometrial cancer, so consuming soy with lots of its phytoestrogens can reduce cancer risk by reducing endogenous estrogen production. And the same could be said for endometrial cancer and bone loss. However, synthetic estrogens like BPA in plastics and DDT in pesticides are totally different and can have negative effects on our endocrine system. On the right, you can see the sources of phytoestrogens, the most coming from the isoflavone class, which includes those phytoestrogens in soy, and next is the lignans, which are found most in seeds like flax and sesame, among some other smaller amounts of cruciferous vegetables. And here's a look at the sources per 100 grams of the food, and flax seeds by far are number one, followed by a bunch of soy products. Another class of phytonutrients are the flavonoids, and these help us maintain a healthy weight by helping to regulate satiety and inflammation. At the same time, they help to protect against cardiovascular disease and neurodegenerative diseases, mainly through improving how blood flows through your vessels more efficiently. Within the flavonoid group of phytonutrients are 6 subclasses, which you can read through on these slides, and there's a nice table in your book in the required reading as well that shows all of these. And on the USDA website, you can actually look up the amount of individual phytonutrients. Not that any normal consumer does this, but it's nice to know that the resource exists. And because of their health-promoting benefits, flavonoids are often packaged into supplement form, but supplements like quercetin and tea extracts can cause side effects that just don't occur when you consume the flavonoid in the original plant. Cooking can reduce flavonoid content substantially, but if the only way you're going to eat it is cooked, then cook it. Like Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and you miss 100% of the phytonutrients that you don't eat. Time can cause your produce to lose flavonoids, and you can see it happen as colors become muted. And these are mostly in the skins of fruits and vegetables as well. So if you only eat peeled apples, you're out of luck. Let's move on to berries. And berries contain the highest antioxidant levels in the plant kingdom. And the darker the berry, the more antioxidants we have. The anthocyanins are a flavonoid compound that gives berries their dark colors, and these have been shown to prevent fat accumulation in the liver, that steatohepatitis that we learned about from Dr. Lustig. That's a hallmark of metabolic syndrome. And when consuming berries, variety is the key. You want to eat that whole purple, blue, red, orange spectrum, and cooking methods have different effects on different foods. Blueberries can actually increase their antioxidant levels with steaming. The Global Burden of Disease study calculated that not eating enough nuts and seeds was the 3rd leading dietary risk factor for death and disability in the world. That eating just a cup a day can extend your life by 2 years. Now that's pretty impressive. Walnuts appear to be among the healthiest with their high levels of antioxidants and omega-3s. And the Predimed study had some remarkable findings showing that a group who ate about half a pound of nuts a week, or about a handful of nuts per day, cut their risk of stroke in half. And I know what you're thinking, what about peanuts? They're not nuts, they're legumes, but they can be included as well. The Nurses' Health study found that women at high risk for heart disease who ate a tablespoon of peanut butter or nuts 5 or more times per week cut their risk of heart disease in half. To me, one of the most interesting things about nuts, and you'll hear it in one of the videos, is that they appear to defy the laws of thermodynamics. In over 20 clinical trials on nuts and weight loss or weight gain or weight maintenance, all of the studies showed that people lost weight or maintained weight, even when you're adding calories to the diet. That just shouldn't happen. Some explanations for this included the pistachio principle, that we spend so much energy breaking the nut down. And then there's the fecal extraction theory that says a lot of the calories just go right through us, but that's been disproven because nut butter has the same effect as nuts. There's a dietary compensation theory as well that says that if you eat nuts, it makes you full and you end up eating less food overall throughout the day. And of all the calories you eat in nuts, about 70% of those calories appear to be negated through these 3 mechanisms. The last 30% or more, in the case of weight loss, come from our improved ability to oxidize fat after we eat nuts. And one study in Australia looked at the amount of grams of fat that people were able to burn over an 8-hour period after consuming nearly identical meals, one with olive oil and one replacing the olive oil with walnuts. Same amount of calories, same everything. The control group with the olive oil was able to oxidize 20 grams of fat during the 8-hour test period, while the walnut group oxidized 31 grams. This suggests that by eating nuts, we rev up our ability to burn more calories and more calories from fat. Our last stop is beans, which, like meat, are loaded with protein, iron, and zinc, and unlike meat, are also loaded with potassium, fiber, and folate. The American Institute for Cancer Research recommends them with every single meal, and they're associated with an 8% decrease in premature death for every 2 tablespoon increase per day. Maybe you're not a fan of the musical part of the musical fruit. Well, Hippocrates himself said that passing gas is necessary to well-being, and Dr. John Fardy suggests the social norms should change to have increased tolerance of our toots. Dr. Lustig says that we have a choice, fat or fart, or between passing gas or passing on, breaking wind or breaking down. In reality, a half-cup addition of beans per day didn't lead to gassy symptoms in most of the subjects assessed, and for those who did have extra gas, it was diminished within 2 to 3 weeks. And this study left researchers flabbergasted. It appeared that if beans aren't so musical, they were indeed magical. They appear to be exceptionally low glycemic. The same 50 grams of carbohydrates in beans has a significantly reduced glucose and therefore insulin response compared to grains, breads, pasta, cereals, biscuits, and potatoes. This might be a major reason why they're so good for us and why we should try to have them with every meal.